Rumor has it that Gu Huijin was born to protect me. In our childhood, he followed me around every day, and in our youth, he took a sword for me. Except for the 3 years he lost his memory due to severe injuries, Gu Huijin gave me almost all the love of his life. Even after I was diagnosed with a cold syndrome after marriage, when everyone in the capital urged him to remarry, he only silently warmed my hands. Yet it was such a person. On the snowy night of my impending death, he said that his responsibilities in this life were fulfilled, and if there is an afterlife, he hoped you would allow him and Dublin Yin to be together. It turns out that even when he lost his memory, he had already fallen in love with Su Dublin Yin, who saved him. The woman who saved him when he was severely injured and was about to jump off a cliff when he regained his memory. When I opened my eyes again, I had been reborn back to the time after Gu Huijin lost his memory. The first thing I did was summon the imperial physician to check my pulse. The second thing was to call off the engagement. Later, the amnesiac Gu Huijin married Su Wanyin as he wished, but a year later, her memories returned. Hello, everyone, welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful stories every day. Now, the story begins. In the winter of the 23rd year of Yongxi, outside the window, the faint, intermittent sound of festive drums and gongs could be heard. It was the sound of General Gu Huijin welcoming his new bride. He was once my consort. The palace attendants had long been dismissed. He didn't need them, and I didn't need anyone to witness my final humiliation. Footsteps approached from afar and stopped before the bed. It was Gu Huijin. He was dressed in vibrant red wedding robes, his posture tall and straight, just like the young general from my memories who had once shielded me from all storms, yet his gaze was icy cold. Your Highness. The auspicious hour has arrived. I must go now. With the last of my strength, I tried to grasp the hem of his robe, just as I had countless times in childhood, believing that if I held on to him, he wouldn't leave. The moment I touched his sleeve, he lifted his hand and brushed it away. The gesture was subtle, yet carried an undisguised revulsion. He looked at me, his gaze devoid of pity, only a cold, unburdened indifference. Your Highness, my duty to you in this life is now fulfilled. I stared at him intently. He hesitated for a moment, then finally spoke. If there is a next life, I hope you will allow me and Wanyin to be together. He turned and walked away without looking back. Gu Huijin, the man who once said he would pluck the stars and embrace the moon for me, who claimed I was the meaning of his entire life, stood before me in his wedding robes as I lay dying and told me his duty was fulfilled. He hopes I will grant him my blessing. Well, what a noble sacrifice. When I opened my eyes again, I saw the familiar bed canopy above me. Your Highness, you're awake. I saw the worried face of my personal maid, Yun Q. You fell into the water and were so frightened. You've been unconscious for a whole day. You scared me to death. The imperial physician said you need to rest well. Falling into the water, unconscious for a whole day. I lowered my head to look at my own hands, pale and slender. Bring me a mirror. Yun Q quickly fetched a bronze mirror. The person in the mirror was young, vibrant, and radiant, the very picture of youth at its finest. Have I truly returned, back to a time before everything began? Your Highness, what's wrong? Are you still feeling unwell? You were frowning in your sleep. Did you have a nightmare? General Gu Huijin. I interrupted her. What happened to him? General Gu fell from his horse into the water 10 days ago, suffered some shock, and is recuperating at the outer palace residence. His Majesty has kept the news sealed, so outsiders don't know yet. I heard that the general seems to have forgotten some things. Amnesia. Yes, this is the moment. In my previous life, upon hearing that he had fallen into the water and lost his memory, I was frantic with worry and desperately wanted to see him, to awaken his memories. Yet all I received in return were his unfamiliar, guarded eyes, and later, his increasingly affectionate gaze toward Su Wanyin, the one who had saved him. No. Not in this life. Never again. Gu Huijin, since you have already forgotten, it would be best if you forgot forever. Since you feel your duty is fulfilled, then we are completely even. Lark, go and fetch Physician Wang. Remember, be quick, and don't alert anyone. Physician Wang is an old retainer left by my mother, loyal and reliable. Your Highness, are you feeling unwell? The head of the Imperial Medical Bureau just left, saying you were merely startled and that there's nothing seriously wrong. I just feel palpitations and shortness of breath ever since I fell into the water. I need Imperial Physician Wang to come and examine me carefully again so I can feel at ease. I must confirm whether that cold ailment has come back with my rebirth. Seeing my insistence, Yun Q, though puzzled, still went. I leaned against the bed, gazing at this familiar palace. Every piece of decor is a testament to the deep affection between Gu Huijin and me. He once said that the finest things in the world should be worthy of me, Princess Chang'an. Now, it all seems utterly ironic. One incense sticks time later. Yun Qiu quietly brought in Imperial Physician Wang. Physician Wang, despite his advanced age, remained meticulous and prudent in his actions. After dismissing the attendants, he knelt and saluted. Your humble servant pays respects to your highness the princess. Physician Wang, please rise. I apologize for troubling you so late at night. But I am deeply unsettled, your highness. You are too kind. It is my duty to share your concerns. Physician Wang rose and asked respectfully, may I inquire where your highness feels unwell? I extended my hand. Since falling into the water, I've been feeling palpitations and shortness of breath, struggling to sleep peacefully at night. I must trouble you, Imperial Physician, to carefully examine my pulse once more for me, checking every aspect thoroughly. Physician Wang noticed the implication in my words, and his expression grew increasingly grave. He placed his fingers on my pulse, carefully examining it. In my previous life, this cold syndrome wasn't diagnosed until several years later, but the physician said it had been latent for many years. Royal Physician Wang's brows furrowed slightly at times, then relaxed. Finally, he withdrew his hand and took a step back. Your Highness, according to the pulse diagnosis, although your pulse was disturbed by the shock of falling into the water, your foundation is stable, your vital energy is abundant, and your 5 organs are in harmony. There is no serious issue. The palpitations and shortness of breath you mentioned are likely due to fear and shock. With a few days of proper rest and some calming herbal medicine, it should ease. No serious issues, no hidden ailments at all. Royal Physician Wang shook his head with certainty. Your Highness, I have repeatedly examined you. Your esteemed health is robust, with no signs of any hidden ailments. Please set your mind at ease. Being healthy and alive is far more important than a man who has someone else in his heart. I understand. Thank you, Royal Physician Wang. As for today's pulse diagnosis, Your Highness, rest assured, this old servant has never set foot in Yongla Palace today. I nodded with satisfaction and had Yun Qiu escort him out. Gu Huijin, since you have lost your memory and fallen in love with your savior, perfect. In this life, I, Li Chang'an, will step aside for you too, and for myself as well. Lark, prepare paper and ink. Also, I need to change my clothes and do my makeup. Your Highness, your health has not yet fully recovered. It's fine, I have urgent matters and need to see His Majesty immediately. To annul the engagement, this is something I must do. The lark deftly dressed me up. She picked out a phoenix hairpin and was about to insert it into my hair. Just use that jade hairpin instead. I glanced at those pieces of jewelry, many of which were gifts from Gu Huijin. On my birthdays, festivals, or every time he returned victorious from battle, he would bring me some new jewelry. Your Highness, you seem somewhat different today. Different, indeed. How could someone who has died once still be the same as they were yesterday? Find all of these, along with what's in the boxes, and carefully count them before packing and sealing them up. Your Highness, these are all your usual favorites. Why are we packing them up? Are they being stored away? No, they are to be returned to their original owner. Returned to their original owner. Yun Qiu grew even more puzzled. But these were all gifts from General Gu to you. It won't be for long, I interrupted her, spreading out a sheet of paper. Your daughter, Chang'an, respectfully addresses Your Majesty. The marriage contract between me and the Duke of Weiguo, Gu Huijin, originated from our childhood. I did not complain about his memory loss, did not mention Su Wanyin, and did not reveal the slightest hint of personal emotion. I only state the facts objectively and humbly request that Your Majesty annul the engagement, so that we may each find our own peace. Yun Qiu, standing nearby, had already turned pale. Your Highness, you want to call off the engagement. Why is that? General Gu has only temporarily forgotten. The Imperial Physician said his memory will return. Are you upset because the general has lost his memory? His Majesty will not agree, and the court officials will. Yun Qiu, more words are of no use. Go attend to your duties. Yun Qiu swallowed all her words of persuasion. She lowered her head, acknowledged the order, and quickly led a few young palace maids to take inventory of the items. I took that letter of annulment to go see my father, Zichen Palace. Father was reviewing memorials. When I entered, he pointed to the seat beside him. Chang'an is here. Are you feeling better? I heard you fell into the water and was planning to visit you after I finished my work. I did not take a seat, but instead knelt down, raising my hands above my head. I beg Your Majesty to take a look. He set down his brush and looked at me. What is the meaning of this? Rise and speak." The eunuch attendant took it and handed it to him. His Majesty quickly skimmed through it. At first, his expression was gentle. But as his gaze moved downward, the gentleness on his face gradually gave way to surprise and confusion. "Chang'an, tell me, what is the meaning of this? Incompatible temperaments. I have watched you two grow up together, and your temperaments could not be more compatible. Is it because Huijin lost his memory after falling into the water that you feel wronged?" I remained kneeling upright and raised my head. "Your Majesty, I am not acting impulsively, nor do I hold any resentment towards General Jiyu for losing his memory. This matter is a decision I have made after careful consideration." "Careful consideration? I see you are simply being reckless. How can marriage, such a significant matter, be treated as child's play? Do you think you can just call it off as you please? Huijin is a pillar of the state, and it was in service to the nation that he met with this misfortune. If I were to permit you to break off the engagement now, how would the people of the world view me? How would they view you?" "Father," I interrupted him, "your son would like to ask, if a marriage loses its original intent, leaving only duty and obligation, and requires one party to desperately hold on while the other remains oblivious or even has their heart set elsewhere, is such a union truly what you wish to see? Forcing them together, is that not also a betrayal?" I continued, "Your son does not wish to force a bond that has long since soured, nor do I want us to grow resentful of each other in the future, until even the last trace of affection is worn away. I beg you, Father, to grant me this, and to grant General Jiyu the same." The Emperor scrutinized me. "Chang'an, have you heard something? Is it because of the woman who saved him?" "I need not hear anything. Father, when someone's heart is no longer with you, you can feel it. Since that is the case, why not let go? For him, it is liberation. For me, it is a new beginning." I kowtowed once more. "I beg your Majesty's permission." A long silence. I could sense the weighing in his heart. He cherished me. But he was even more concerned with the court's dignity and the relationship between ruler and subject. But an emperor understands best that a forced melon is not sweet. "Forget it, forget it. I've always been unable to do anything about you. Since you are so determined, I grant you permission." "Thank you, Father." "Rise." "But Chang'an, once this matter is announced, there will inevitably be criticism from both the court and the public. I understand, since I have made this choice. I am prepared to bear any consequences. Gossip and slander cannot harm me." The Emperor looked at me, his eyes showing a hint of approval. "My daughter has truly grown up. What about Huijin? I will go in person to return the tokens of our past engagement and make everything clear face to face. Since the engagement has been called off, it should be ended cleanly." The Emperor nodded, said nothing more, and simply waved his hand. I bowed and took my leave, exiting the Purple Palace. The news of the princess's broken engagement spread throughout the capital. As I rode in the carriage out of the palace gates, I overheard some of the gossip, whether I wanted to or not. Lark sat beside me. "Your Highness, listen to what they're saying outside. Why did you have to go in person? Couldn't you have just sent a eunuch to deliver the message?" I closed my eyes to rest. Why care about others' gossip? Some things must be settled personally. I want to see with my own eyes that Jiyu Huijin, who has completely forgotten me and is about to rush toward a new life, I want to personally return everything from the past to him. The suburban villa where Jiyu Huijin is recuperating. "Lark, bring the case." I took her hand and stepped down from the carriage. The guards at the villa entrance saw me and hurriedly bowed in greeting. Without acknowledging them, I walked straight inside. The villa was very quiet, overlapping with memories from my past life, yet completely different. In my past life at this moment, I had rushed in here with a heart full of anxiety and love, only to be met by his unfamiliar and distant gaze. Now, there is only peace. The guard leading the way looked terrified, not daring to make a sound. I saw them. Jiyu Huijin was half reclining on a bamboo couch, his face still somewhat pale. But his spirits were passable. A woman was holding a bowl of medicine, carefully blowing on it, about to feed him. My footsteps startled them. The woman turned her head first. It was Su Wanyin. Her features were delicate and refined, carrying an air of vulnerability that evoked pity, but in her eyes, aside from panic, there was also a trace of wariness. She shrank back toward Jiyu Huijin's direction like a startled little white rabbit. Jiyu Huijin also lifted his head and looked over. There was no wild joy like when I saw him in my past life, no deep affection, only complete unfamiliarity, and the vigilance and confusion of being disturbed. Lark nervously gasped behind me. I walked until I was about 10 steps away from them and stopped. This distance, neither too far nor too close, was just right. General Gu, it seems your health has fully recovered. Gu Huijin's brows furrowed even tighter, as if he was struggling to recall. You are, this is Her Highness, Princess Chang'an. The eunuch attendant nearby quickly whispered in reminder. A flicker of surprise passed through Gu Huijin's eyes, but it soon settled into calmness. This humble general is unwell and unable to perform the proper courtesies. I beg your highness's forgiveness. The general is injured. There is no need for such formalities. I raised my hand slightly to stop his movements, then turned my gaze to the tense Su Wanyin. I have come today for two matters, upon hearing my status. Su Wanyin's face grew even paler. Gu Huijin leaned back on the couch. Your Highness, please speak. The first matter is that His Majesty has approved the annulment of our engagement. I have come specifically to inform you. General, Gu Huijin was stunned, showing emotion for the first time, and beside him, Su Wanyin looked up at me, her eyes filled with disbelief, then quickly lowered her head again. Why, I have already explained the reason to His Majesty the Emperor. If the general wishes to know, you may inquire of His Majesty directly. As for the second matter, I slightly turned and gestured toward the sparrow and the attendant behind me. The attendant carried the wooden box forward, placed it in the courtyard, and opened it. Inside, a dazzling array of items filled the space. All traces of the years between him and me, the grass-woven grasshopper he gave me in childhood, the somewhat rough peachwood hairpin he carved for a long time as a youth, the exotic gemstone bracelet he brought back after his first campaign, the luminous pearl bestowed by the Emperor as a reward for his great achievements. Each one was once a memory I treasured dearly. Now, they are merely cold objects. These are all items the general once bestowed upon me. Now that the marriage contract has been dissolved, these should naturally be returned. Please, General, verify and inspect them. Gu Huijin's gaze followed my words, settling on the full box of items. His eyes grew somewhat complex, a mix of confusion and what seemed like a sense of familiarity. Su Wanyin also looked at the box, her eyes flickering. A gust of wind swept by, lifting a handkerchief from the box. Gu Huijin instinctively stood up, wanting to catch the falling handkerchief. Huijin, Su Wanyin suddenly exclaimed in a low voice, hurriedly putting down the medicine bowl. Your injury hasn't healed yet. You mustn't move recklessly. Gu Huijin's outstretched hand froze midair. Coming back to his senses, he glanced at Su Wanyin's worried and anxious face, then looked at the handkerchief on the ground. It's nothing, just a minor injury. I watched this scene coldly, feeling nothing but irony and absurdity in my heart. It seems the general has no need for an inventory, since that is the case. The items have been delivered, the message has been conveyed, and I shall not disturb the general's rest any further. With that, I turned to leave. Your Highness. Gu Huijin suddenly called out to me. I did not look back. Before, I'm sorry, I can't remember. Perfect, then never remember again. It's just as well that the general has forgotten. The past is but a fleeting cloud, there's no need to dwell on it. Farewell, Lark. Her eyes rimmed red, quickly caught up with me. As I stepped out of the villa's main gate, I took a deep breath. Just as I was about to board the carriage, the sound of hoofbeats came from behind me. The carriage curtain was lifted, and a person stepped out. He had a tall and straight figure, a gentle and refined demeanor, with clear and gentle features. It was Jing Wang's son, Pei Ziheng. He hadn't expected to meet me here. Taking a few steps forward, he bowed to me respectfully and properly. Your subject. Pei Ziheng, pays respects to your highness the princess. His gaze fell upon me, carrying not only the proper etiquette but also a trace of concern. Though it was measured with perfect restraint, I looked at him, recalling memories from my past life about him, a man as radiant and pure as the moon after rain, entirely different from Gu Huijin. There's no need for such courtesy. Your Highness, what brings you here? I heard that General Gu is recuperating here. My father ordered me to visit and bring some medicinal herbs. Your Highness, I have already paid my visit. The young master may do as he pleases. Pei Ziheng was a clever man. He naturally sensed the tense atmosphere and had heard the rumors. Yes, I bid your highness farewell. I took one last look at him, nodded, then turned and boarded the carriage with Yun Q's assistance. Upon returning to Yongla Palace, the hall remained as quiet as before, yet it felt as if something had changed. The palace servants were more cautious than usual. The news of my broken engagement had become the talk of the deep palace. The Lark helped me remove my hairpins. Your Highness, she finally couldn't hold back, her voice choked with tears. Why must you do this? There are all sorts of rumors outside now, and they're saying such terrible things. What are they saying? The Lark bit her lip, her eyes growing even redder. They say you're cold and heartless. General Gu has just suffered a great misfortune and lost his memory, yet you couldn't wait to cut ties. They say you're taking advantage of your status as a princess to bully others too much, and some even say, you might have already had someone else." She couldn't go on, tears pattering down. "Is that all? Anything even worse?" My overly calm attitude made the lark freeze in surprise. She forgot to cry. Nodding blankly before hurriedly shaking her head, "It's nothing more than the gossip of those with short-sighted views. They only see my heartlessness, but fail to see his lack of heart. Let them talk. But your highness, your reputation, Skylark, tell me, which is better? The reputation of a princess who lives as a widow in all but name, watching her consort's heart belong to another, only to die of melancholy in the end? Or the reputation of a cold and heartless princess who lives freely and contentedly? Moreover, there may very well be hands stirring the waters behind the scenes. The Gu family has deep roots and strong influence, and Gu Huijin is a rising star with outstanding military achievements. My breaking off the engagement not only slaps Gu Huijin in the face but also humiliates the entire Gu family. How could they possibly let it go? The public opinion that seems to sympathize with Gu Huijin and criticize me for being heartless is, to a large extent, influenced by the Gu family and other forces seeking to curry favor with them. Sure enough, the next day when I went to pay my respects to the Empress, the atmosphere was particularly tense. Several consorts who were usually on friendly terms avoided eye contact, and their words carried a sense of distance. A consort who has never been on good terms with me covered her mouth with a round fan, her voice neither too loud nor too soft, just enough for everyone in the room to hear. If you ask me, a woman should still have a broad heart. General Gu was injured for the country, and it can't be helped that he forgot the past. At a time like this, what's needed is careful care and helping him remember. That's the proper way. To be so eager to draw a clear line, tsk. It only benefits those vixens who come from who knows where. She didn't finish her words, but her gaze meaningfully drifted toward the window. The Empress sat upright above and did not scold her, only glanced at me and said, "Chang'an, your recent actions have indeed been a bit rash. Although His Majesty dotes on you, the court is no place for games. Minister Gu has submitted a request for an audience today. I'm afraid it's also about this matter." I rose and curtsied respectfully. "I appreciate your Majesty and everyone's concern. However, Chang'an believes that marriage is like drinking water. Only the drinker knows if it's warm or cold. Since our hearts have already drifted apart, why force it? As for court matters, His Majesty the Emperor will make his own wise decisions." My words, neither too soft nor too hard, pushed back. The consort's expression shifted, but in the end, she said nothing more. The Empress waved her hand. "Enough, since your mind is made up. I won't say more, but Chang'an, you must understand this path is of your own choosing. If hardships come in the future, you must bear them yourself." "I understand, Your Majesty. Thank you for your guidance." Leaving the Queen's palace, the sunlight was just right, yet I felt a slight chill. This was only the beginning. Over the next 2 days, the turmoil did not subside but instead intensified. Even the imperial court began to hear whispers, with several censors and remonstrance officials allegedly hinting that my conduct was improper and had tarnished the royal family's dignity. The lark grew increasingly anxious. Every day, I read books, practiced calligraphy, and even tended to the flowers and plants in the courtyard. I waited, waiting for the inevitable outcome. In the afternoon, while I was copying a calligraphy model, a eunuch hurried in with an oral decree from the emperor, summoning me to the Purple Palace immediately. "He's here." I put down my brush and followed the attendant. In the hall, it wasn't just my father, the emperor, alone. Minister Gu Huijin's father, had a grave expression. As I entered, my father's face was not pleasant. He threw a memorial in front of me. "Chang'an, see for yourself." I picked up the memorial and opened it. It was Gu Huijin's handwriting. In the memorial, he first expressed gratitude for the imperial favor, stating that his injuries were gradually healing. Then, the tone shifted as he mentioned that after falling into the water and losing his memory, he was fortunate to have Su Wanin's careful care and constant companionship, and feelings gradually developed between them. "This woman is known for her gentle and virtuous conduct. Although she comes from a humble background, she has been a great benefactor to me, as if giving me a second life. Lastly, I earnestly beseech your Majesty to consider that, though his memories have not returned and his past is entirely forgotten, all that remains is a sincere heart. Grant him permission to marry Su Wanin, so that he may repay her kindness and fulfill his lifelong wish." The entire appeal is written with sincere words and genuine emotion. I can even imagine that as he wrote these words, Miss Sue must have been standing beside him, perhaps blushing as she ground ink for him. I closed the memorial and raised my head. Father, what do you mean by having your child look at this? The emperor stared at me. Huai-jin has submitted this petition requesting a marriage decree. Do you understand now? When you broke off the engagement that day, I thought you were just being willful. But now it seems, he finally sighed. Do you regret it now? Lord Jiyu also stepped forward. Your Highness. Jinna was merely momentarily confused, led astray by that common girl. How could anyone compare to the years of affection between you two? If you are willing to agree, this old servant would even tie him up and bring him back to apologize to you. This decree of marriage must not be allowed. My Jiyu family will never accept a woman of such dubious origins. I look at them. One is an emperor with great power, the other is a worried father. They all want me to regret, want me to turn back, want me to beg them to stay. I can even imagine that if I show the slightest hint of grievance or shed a single tear at this moment, my father would suppress this memorial, and Lord Jiyu would spare no effort to separate Jiyu Huaijin and Su Wanin. I knelt down. Father, Lord Jiyu, the reasons stated in General Gu's memorial are precisely why I requested to annul the marriage that day. The Emperor and Minister Jiyu were both stunned. Since he has found what his heart desires, I am genuinely happy for him. I lifted my head, looking at my father with a candid gaze. This marriage, I believe, is quite fitting. Chang'an, you. Father Emperor stood up, his face full of disbelief. Lord Jiyu staggered back a step. I continued, I beseech your majesty to grant General Gu's sincere feelings. I also ask your majesty to grant me this wish. May General Jiyu and Miss Su share a harmonious union for 100 years. Forever united in heart. The emperor looked at me, his expression exceedingly complex. You truly, enough. I can no longer control you. Thank you, father. As I rose, I turned to General Jiyu. General, take care of your health. With that, I didn't look at anyone's expression and turned to walk out of the side hall. The marriage decree was soon issued. The general content was, granting Jiyu Huaijin's request, he is betrothed to Su Wanin. Additionally, the annulment of the engagement between Princess Chang'an and General Jiyu was mutually agreed upon and fairly decided by me. From now on, no one in the court or the public is allowed to make unwarranted comments. The dust has settled, Jiyu Huaijin, in this life, between you and me. From now on, mountains and rivers will forever separate us, and we shall have no more ties. My path, I must walk it myself. After this incident, my father had no more ways to deal with me, so he simply stopped interfering. The Empress summoned me once more, and seeing my calm expression, she only sighed and said, "Take care of yourself." Before letting me go, the Yongla Palace quieted down. I began to truly live like a princess. Not as some man's fiancée. In the early mornings, I no longer needed to think about what to wear to please someone, but instead browsed through the new books delivered by the palace library. Some were about civil affairs and governance, others were travelogues and descriptions of local customs. In my previous life, confined by love and romance, I never knew the world within books was so vast. Your Highness, the books you've been reading lately seem different from before. Lark poured hot tea for me, the worry between her brows having faded considerably. Though unaccustomed to my transformation, she was more pleased to see me as I am now, just browsing through them to pass the time. I heard that last year the canal transport in Jiangnan was blocked, causing fluctuations in the capital's rice prices. Has it stabilized now? A few days ago, I overheard the head matron of the small kitchen complaining that with the new rice arriving in the capital, the price has actually dropped a bit compared to last winter. I nodded and didn't ask further. 2 days later, the palace held a small spring banquet, inviting some young members of the imperial clan and favored ministers' family members. In the past on such occasions, I would mostly stay by Jiyu Huaijin's side or chat with other noble ladies about hairpins, jewelry, and clothing. This time, I arrived early. I found an inconspicuous yet well-positioned seat and quietly listened to the conversations around me. Several sons of commandery princes were loudly discussing polo and hunting, while a few young ladies were comparing their newly acquired cosmetics. I listened absent-mindedly, my gaze drifting toward the entrance. A figure appeared. It was Pei Ziheng. With his hair tied up in a jade crown, his demeanor was refined and gentle. Standing out with a particularly calm presence among the other young nobles, he glanced at me and stepped forward gracefully, saying, "Your subject, Pei Ziheng, pays respects to your highness, the princess. You need not be so formal, young master." I raised my hand, gesturing for him to take a seat beside me. He carried himself with grace, not forcing conversation but quietly watching the fish swimming in the pond. Meanwhile, the animated discussions of several other young masters nearby drifted over. They were talking about several new western steeds at the suburban horse farm, wild and untamed, with no one able to break them. One of the princely heirs laughed and said, "If only General Gu were here, he's a master at taming horses." What a pity. As he spoke, he glanced in my direction, his tone full of regret. "I don't really care." Instead, it was Pei Ziheng sitting across from me who suddenly spoke up. Western horses have fierce temperaments and indeed require skill to tame. However, the Prince of Jing's estate also acquired one last year. At first, no one could get near it, but later they found an old groom who, unhurried and unruffled, used gentleness to overcome strength. After half a month, it's now very docile. He naturally steered the conversation away from Jiyu Huaijin and turned to discussing horse-taming methods. The other young nobles also took the opportunity to join in. And the atmosphere became lively again. I glanced at Pei Ziheng. He was listening to someone speak, his expression focused, as if the words he had spoken to help me out earlier were just a casual remark, not deliberate. Midway through the banquet, the crowd dispersed to enjoy themselves. I leaned against the railing, feeding the fish, when Pei Ziheng came over at some point and stood a step away from me, also gazing at the water. "Just now, thank you, Your Highness, Your Highness." "Why do you say that? I have done nothing." "Your Highness has." I turned my head to look at him. "Your Highness, do you know why that Western region horse could be tamed by the old groom, but not by others? The impatient, seeing its fierce nature, only think to subdue it by force, which instead provokes its resistance. The old groom understands its nature, gives it what it needs, and patiently guides it. Over time, it learns that those who approach mean no harm and even bring benefits. And so it naturally becomes gentle." "Indeed," I said, scattering a handful of fish food into the water, causing the koi to scramble for it. "Understand its nature, cater to its preferences, and guide it patiently. Governing a country, pacifying the nation, and managing the people, sometimes it's no different from taming a horse or feeding fish. Suppression is not as effective as guidance, blocking is not as good as channeling. Your Highness's insight is profound. I have learned much." "Just some idle talk. I've been casually flipping through books lately and happen to have some thoughts." "Your Highness reads books on statecraft, not boudoir literature," he said with a smile, his tone devoid of flattery, only equal discussion. "The other day, I happened to acquire a journal from a former river governor of the previous dynasty. Some of his insights on canal transportation and dredging share a remarkable similarity with what Your Highness just mentioned." "Oh." "The heir also pays attention to matters of canal transport. My father serves in the Ministry of Works, so I've picked up a thing or two through casual exposure," he said modestly, yet he went on to speak fluently, clearly explaining several strategies from the notes regarding the use of hydrology, dredging in sections, and pacifying canal workers. I listened carefully, occasionally interjecting with a question or two, to which he responded with ease and offered unique insights. In this way, we moved from discussing water transport to agriculture and sericulture, and then from agriculture and sericulture to border trade. He was profoundly knowledgeable, yet never showed off. His words were gentle, always catching my points perfectly and steering the conversation toward deeper discussions. It has been a long time since I had such a pure and delightful conversation with someone, where I didn't have to guess the other's intentions or worry about differences in status. It was simply a meeting of minds. It wasn't until the lark came to remind us that it was getting late that I realized I had been talking with him for so long. "Today's conversation with you, the heir, has been truly enlightening." Pei Ziheng bowed respectfully and said, "Your Highness, you flatter me. It was I who spoke too much and delayed your enjoyment of the scenery." As I left, I glanced back over my shoulder. Pei Ziheng was still standing in the same spot, watching me go. When he saw me looking at him, he gave a slight nod, his smile gentle and warm. I remembered that in my past life, around this time, I was probably waiting outside Jiyu Huaijin's villa, racking my brains for an excuse to catch a glimpse of him, only to be hurt time and again by the delicate figure by his side and his own aloof demeanor. The current tranquility and fulfillment feel like a lifetime away. Walking along the palace road, I happened to encounter a procession of carriages coming toward me. They were lavishly decorated, belonging to the Jiyu family. The carriage stopped, and the curtain was lifted. Jiyu Huaijin's face was revealed. He seemed to have lost some weight, with a trace of weariness between his brows. Su Wanyin sat beside him, dressed in a newly tailored brocade gown, her hair adorned with expensive pearl hairpins. She was whispering something to him. A gentle smile gracing her face, he sensed my gaze and looked over. Our eyes met. His expression was complex, as if he wanted to nod in acknowledgement, yet there seemed to be other emotions mixed in. I had already withdrawn my gaze a step ahead. After that day's conversation with Paisiheng, he would occasionally send a few books he found interesting, using various excuses. Sometimes they were about river management, sometimes about border customs, and even some records of strange tales from overseas foreign lands. Between the pages, there would occasionally be one or two notes with brief thoughts or questions written on them. It wasn't an attempt to flatter, but more like a discussion between like-minded individuals. I would also reciprocate with rare copies or replicas from the palace, or write down my own views on the questions he raised and have Yun-Q deliver them, back and forth. This kind of exchange unexpectedly became a bright spot in my otherwise mundane days. Conversing with him always allowed me to look beyond the palace walls and see a broader world. Recently, I was frowning over a copy of Complete Treatise on Agriculture on my desk. An ancient method for controlling locust plagues recorded in it seemed to differ somewhat from the recent reports I had received. Yun-Q came in with a smile and announced, "Your Highness, the son of Prince Jing is here." He mentioned that he has a miscellaneous record of agriculture and sericulture from the previous dynasty, which might be of some help to Your Highness. Please invite the young master in. Apologies for disturbing Your Highness's peace. I happened to come across this item while going through old family records. It was written by a recluse from the previous dynasty, recording some rustic farming methods. Though crude, there might be something worthwhile in it. I took it, unrolled the scroll, and indeed found records about locust habits and repellent methods. Though plainly worded, it offered unique perspectives that happened to resolve precisely the doubts I had. The prince's timely assistance is truly appreciated. This item is excellent. I expressed my gratitude sincerely and invited him to sit down. I have been troubled by this matter recently. We began discussing the records on the bamboo slips. His insights were unique. He did not blindly adhere to ancient methods but instead emphasized adapting to local conditions. Your Highness has been paying close attention to the people's welfare lately. I set down my pen and remained silent for a moment. Some words have lingered in my heart for a long time, never spoken to anyone. Your Highness, do you believe in past lives and reincarnation? Paisiheng cautiously replied, Buddhism speaks of such things, although I have never witnessed it myself. I believe the world is vast and full of mysteries. It is not impossible. I smiled faintly. Sometimes I wonder, if a person becomes obsessed with a corner, focusing only on one person or one matter, isn't it like a frog at the bottom of a well? They see only a small patch of sky, yet believe they have grasped everything. Only when the well collapses and they see the world again do they realize how vast the mountains and rivers are outside, and how they have wasted their years. Nearly trapped to death within. My words were vague, not pointing to any specific person or event, but the regret and profound realization within them were clearly discernible. Paisiheng listened quietly without interrupting, but a complex emotion gradually appeared in his eyes: concern, understanding, and heartache. A frog in a well cannot be spoken to about the sea. A summer insect cannot be spoken to about ice. It is not because of their shallow knowledge, but because of the limitations of their circumstances. However, once you have seen the world, you are no longer the frog from the well. Your Highness, being able to think this way is a rebirth. I stared into his eyes. Perhaps this lifetime can truly be different. Meanwhile, at General Gu's residence, with the wedding date approaching, the mansion was decorated with lanterns and colorful banners, bustling with preparations. Yet beneath this lively atmosphere, undercurrents were lurking. Gu Huijin sat in the study, holding a military strategy book in his hands, yet he hadn't turned a single page. From outside the window came the sound of Su Wanyin directing the servants to hang red silk decorations, her voice filled with joy. He rubbed his temples, an inexplicable restlessness lingering and refusing to fade. Lately, he had been having some strange dreams. Sometimes in his dreams, there were battlefields with clashing weapons and armored horses. Other times, deep courtyards within palace walls, and occasionally, a vague figure standing beneath a grove of crabapple trees, turning back to give him a radiant smile. Yet, no matter how hard he tried, he could never clearly see the woman's face. Each time he awoke from such dreams, his head throbbed with unbearable pain, and his heart felt hollow, as if he had lost something of utmost importance, and Su Wanyin would always appear just in time, bringing him a calming tonic, wiping the sweat from his brow. Her eyes filled with concern. Huijin, another nightmare. she asked softly, her fingers gently massaging his temples. It must be the lingering effects of your fall into the water that haven't fully healed. It's my fault for not taking better care of you. Her gentle care enveloped his unease, yet it also made him swallow back the questions that had reached the tip of his tongue. How could he, facing his soon-to-be wife who was wholly devoted to him, press for answers about another vague woman? He began unconsciously searching for clues in daily life. He discovered he had an unusual preference for the imperial-given pastries, yet Su Wanyin claimed she had never seen him eat them. In the corner of his study lay a short sword, its hilt engraved with the character Chang. When he inquired about its origin, the old steward's eyes darted evasively, claiming it was merely an old relic. He accidentally overheard two servants whispering in a corner. I heard Her Highness the Princess went to the Southern Garden Horse Ranch the day before yesterday and actually tamed that fierce steed from the western regions. Really? But that horse even the Grand General couldn't. Sure, keep your voice down. We can't talk about this in the mansion now. But it's strange, the way His Highness tames horses actually resembles how our great general used to do it back in the day. Both are patient and unhurried, first breaking their spirit. TSK, after all, they grew up together since childhood. The voices gradually faded into the distance. Jiyu Huijin stood where he was. Your Highness, the horse taming, similar methods to his, grew up together since childhood. The headache struck again, more intense than ever before. Huijin, Su Wanin's panicked voice came from behind. What's wrong with you? You look so pale. Are you feeling unwell again? Go back and rest quickly. She helped him turn around, her tone urgent and full of concern. Jiyu Huijin leaned on her shoulder, his eyes closed. The unspoken understanding between Pei Ziheng and me became like a vine quietly growing in the deep palace. Silent, yet resilient, he sent books more and more frequently, and the content was no longer limited to government affairs and people's livelihoods. They were interspersed with poetry, painting books, and even a pot of orchids he had planted himself. This orchid is pure in nature and dislikes heavy fertilizer. Much like the friendship between gentlemen, only through detachment can it endure. The lark smiled beside her. Your Highness, this Prince of Jing is truly an elegant and attentive man. Mind your own business. In the afternoon, as I was pondering over a game of unfinished chess, a voice from outside the hall announced that Pei Ziheng had arrived. He held a brocade box in his hand. I pay my respects to your Highness. What brings the young master here today? I gestured for him to take a seat. He placed an ornate box before me. The other day, I happened upon an ancient inkstone. Though its material is ordinary, its unique shape is its charm. Recalling your Highness's fondness for calligraphy, I thought it might serve for grinding ink, and so I took the liberty of bringing it. I opened the box to find an ancient inkstone inside. Its color was deep and subdued, carved with a rustic charm. Though not a precious item, it appealed to my taste at first glance. You are thoughtful, young master. I happen to have acquired some pine soot ink recently, perfect for a trial. Lark cleverly prepared water and ink sticks. Pei Ziheng naturally took over and began grinding the ink for me. I picked up the brush, dipped it in ink, and casually wrote the characters, quiet observation, on the paper. A fine inkstone. Your Highness does not find it crude, and that is well. Only by observing the heart in stillness can one perceive all things. Your Highness seems to have grown increasingly serene and open-minded in recent days. I set down the brush and looked at him. Some words that had long been weighing on my heart almost slipped out in this atmosphere. Your Highness, have you ever experienced the disorienting feeling of waking from a great dream only to find everything changed, with all paths ahead altered? Pei Ziheng's hand, grinding the ink, paused slightly. He did not answer immediately but instead looked at me quietly, waiting for me to continue. Sometimes I wonder, I went on, if someone had early on told the frog in the well that the world is vast, not limited to that single damp wall, would it still be content to remain trapped there until it withered away? Or has it grown so accustomed to the safety of the well that it now fears the storms and changes beyond its confines? I spoke obscurely, yet he understood. He remained silent for a long time. A frog trapped in a well is not at fault for its confinement. However, if it is fortunate enough to glimpse the light of the sky and realize the vastness of the world, that alone is the first step toward breaking free from its cage. Fear is natural. But if one retreats back into the well out of fear, denying the world they have already seen, that is the true tragedy. He looked at me with sincere eyes. Your Highness is no frog in a well, but a phoenix. A phoenix must endure the agony of burning to be reborn. I admire your Highness's courage in breaking free from the cage, reborn from the ashes. I repeated these 4 words. He understood, He truly understood that unspoken resolve and rebirth within me. I quickly turned my face away, using the pretense of adjusting my sleeve to conceal my lapse in composure. The Crown Prince's words are truly enlightening, I spoke presumptuously. It's just that I feel the world your highness now sees is far more splendid than when confined to a single corner. His words were cleverly spoken, they both responded to my earlier metaphor and subtly shifted the topic. Perhaps, in this lifetime, I can truly hope for another possibility. Meanwhile, inside General Gu's residence, as the wedding date drew nearer, Gu Huijin's brows furrowed more tightly. Those dreams not only failed to decrease but instead became increasingly frequent and vivid. He often wakes in the middle of the night, his heart pounding, unable to shake the image of that woman's retreating figure from his dreams. Huijin, Su Wanyin was startled awake, hurriedly sitting up and lighting the bedside candle. Are you having headaches again? It must be from the exhaustion of preparing for the wedding these past few days. It's all my fault for not being able to share your burdens. As she spoke, her eyes reddened, her voice choked with self-blame. Gu Huijin looked at her, and the questions on the tip of his tongue were once again swallowed back. None of your business, I just couldn't sleep well myself. Tomorrow, the palace will send a matron to finalize the procedures. Huijin, you need to rest well and build up your energy. Yet, Gu Huijin felt an inexplicable and intense resistance welling up inside him. The next day, while trying on the clothes, the crimson brocade robe was magnificent and dignified. The maids carefully dressed him in it. Su Wanyin stood to the side, her eyes filled with admiration and affection. Huijin, you look truly handsome in this. Gu Huijin looked at his reflection in the mirror, and in a daze, the figure in the mirror wavered for a moment, transforming into another scene. He was standing among the crabapple blossoms, dressed in wedding attire, waiting anxiously. The feeling was intense and vivid, completely different from the restlessness he felt now. A sharp headache struck, and he abruptly brushed away the maid's hand that was about to fasten his belt. Huijin, Su Wanyin rushed over to support him. What's wrong? Don't scare me. Take it away. Gu Huijin gritted his teeth. Take this clothing away. Su Wanyin quickly signaled the maid to take the clothes away. She helped Gu Huijin sit on the bed. Is it that you don't like the color, or is the style not to your liking? I'll have them change it right away. Huijin, please don't scare me. We're about to get married. You, Wanyin, Gu Huijin interrupted her. Tell me. Before I lost my memory, how was I? Su Wanyin's sobbing abruptly stopped, and a flicker of panic crossed her eyes. Huijin, why are you suddenly asking this? We naturally fell in love at first sight, and you treated me very well. Have you forgotten? She wept uncontrollably. Is there something I did wrong that made you tired of me? Tell me, I can change anything. Looking at her tear-streaked face, Gu Huijin's heart softened, and his doubts were once again suppressed. He sighed, pulling her into his embrace. No, you're wonderful, it's just that I'm probably too tired. Dragon Boat Festival Banquet. I sat not far from my father, the emperor. Wearing a lake blue dress, Pei Ziheng sat across from me, occasionally meeting my gaze. Everything was proceeding along its predetermined, tranquil course. Assassin, protect His Majesty. The music abruptly ceased, and joyous laughter turned into startled exclamations. Several dark figures darted out, causing chaos in the scene. The woman's screams, the guards' roars, and the clashing of weapons intertwined. Protect His Majesty, protect Her Majesty. The guards shielded the emperor and empress in the center. I was pushed back by the crowd. Gu Huijin firmly shielded Su Wanyin behind him, drew the sword from his waist, and engaged in a fierce struggle with an assassin. His martial arts skills were exceptional. Even caught off guard, he still held the upper hand. Su Wanyin clutched his clothes tightly, her face deathly pale. Just as the assassin was about to be subdued by Gu Huijin, another assassin realized that Su Wanyin was his weakness. Feinting an attack, the assassin suddenly thrust his blade toward Su Wanyin. Wanyin, watch out. Without a second thought, Gu Huijin pushed Su Wanyin aside. Huijin, Su Wanyin let out a heart-wrenching cry. The assassin gathered all his strength and slammed it fiercely toward Gu Huijin. Gu Huijin's eyes widened. A surge of memories, like a breached flood, instantly overwhelmed him. As a child beneath the palace walls, that delicate, jade-like little girl stood on tiptoe, stuffing a sweet cake into his hand, her voice soft and childish. Brother Huijin, this is for you to eat. In their youth on the training ground, when he won first place, she disregarded all decorum and ran down, her eyes sparkling as she tucked a small velvet flower into his armor. Under the crabapple tree, he clumsily held her hand for the first time, his voice trembling with nervousness. Chang'an, when I return victorious from this battle, I will ask His Majesty for an edict. At her coming-of-age ceremony, he declared before all the civil and military officials, Your Highness, will you marry me? Before she fell into the water, she straightened his campaign cloak for him, her eyes and brows filled with smiles. I'll wait for you to come back. Then came darkness, endless darkness and strangeness. Then came Su Wanin's face. Finally, General Zhu and Miss Su, may you have a harmonious union for 100 years, and be of one heart forever, scene after scene. Frame by frame, laughter, tears, promises, betrayal, despair, all the lost memories, along with the image of her death in her previous life, surged into his mind. Jiyu Huaijin clutched his head and let out a hoarse roar. Blood gushed from the back of his head, his mouth, and his nose, yet he seemed completely unaware. His gaze cut through the chaotic crowd and fixed on me. In his eyes, there was regret, collapse, and despair. This moment had finally arrived. He pushed aside the guards and Su Wanin who were trying to support him, staggering step by step, dragging his blood-soaked body, and walked in my direction. Su Wanin cried out, trying to grab him, Huaijin, your injury, where are you going? But he seemed not to hear, his eyes fixed only on me. Finally, he pushed through the crowd and fell heavily to his knees before me. Chang'an, he raised his head. I remember now, I remember everything. Sorry, I'm sorry, Chang'an, he was incoherent. Could only repeat his apologies over and over. I didn't mean to, I didn't know, how could I have forgotten you, how could I? The esteemed General Jiyu, covered in blood, knelt before his former fiancée in front of the emperor, empress, and all the civil and military officials, kowtowing in repentance. Su Wanin stood frozen in place, the color draining from her face. The emperor's face turned ashen, while the empress covered her mouth in shock. I just watched him quietly. This man I had loved to the bone and hated to the marrow in my past life, now kneeling at my feet like a madman. General Jiyu is injured and not in his right mind. Someone, escort General Jiyu away for treatment. He struggled to step forward and grab my skirt, but was held back by the guards. No, Chang'an, listen to me. I know I deserve to die 1,000 deaths. I don't ask for your forgiveness. I only beg you to give me one more chance, just one chance. That's not me. That's not my true heart. I love you, it's always been you. I looked at him. General Jiyu, you've mistaken me for someone else. After saying this, I no longer looked at him, turned around, and gave a slight bow to the emperor and empress. Your child is frightened and feeling unwell, so I shall take my leave first. Then, I straightened my back and left under the gaze of countless complex stares. Behind me came Jiyu Huaijin's heart-wrenching sobs and Su Wanin's panicked screams, and also the sound of Pei Ziheng's footsteps. The palace appeared to have regained its usual solemnity on the surface, but there was no shortage of various whispers. Jiyu Huaijin was carried back to the general's mansion that very day. The Imperial Medical Bureau came and went, and it was said that his injuries were extremely severe. Especially the old wound on his head. He was running a high fever and kept calling my name over and over. Yun-Q hesitated several times, wanting to say something, but in the end, she swallowed the news she had gathered and silently replaced my tea with a calming brew. 3 days later, the gates of Yongla Palace were opened. Jiyu Huaijin stood there. In just 3 days, his face had taken on a sickly grey pallor, his eyes bloodshot and weary. He was dressed in crumpled, disheveled clothes. Pushing aside the palace eunuch as he staggered in, his gaze fixed intently on me. Your Highness, Chang'an, may I speak with you? Just a few words. I looked at him, neither speaking nor moving. He took a few steps forward but dared not get too close, stopping a few paces away. I remember everything now, all of it, from our childhood, the crabapple tree, your coming-of-age ceremony, before I went off to battle, and that snowy night. I am not human, I am despicable. How could I have treated you like that? He slapped himself hard across the face. The palace attendants were so frightened they hardly dared to breathe, yet I simply watched quietly, as if observing a play that had nothing to do with me. General Jiyu, if you've come because of the past, everything between us has long been settled. There's nothing left to say. Settled? How could it possibly be settled? Chang'an, that wasn't me. That was me who had forgotten you. Now I've returned. I know I deserve to die 1,000 deaths. I don't ask for your immediate forgiveness. I only beg you, only ask you to give me a chance to make amends, even if it takes the rest of my life to atone. General Jiyu seems to have forgotten. I interrupted him. You are already betrothed. By the imperial decree of His Majesty, Miss Su is the one you are to marry. What you should be doing now is returning to your general's residence to properly prepare for the wedding. Not staying here in my palace, speaking such untimely words. Betrothal, that doesn't count. That was a mistake I made when I lost my memory. I will go beg His Majesty to revoke the decree. I only want, Gu Huaijin. For the first time, I called him by his full name. Wake up. He stared at me in a daze. The imperial decree is no trifling matter, and marriage is not a tool. Su Wanyin saved you in your time of crisis, and since you chose her then, regardless of the reason. That was your decision. A true man should take responsibility for his own choices. My tone was indifferent and distant. As for you and me, our past ties are over, and there's no need to mention them again. You don't need to atone, and I don't need your compensation. Living our own lives in peace is the best outcome. Living our own lives in peace. Do you hate me so much that it has come to this? I looked at him, my eyes devoid of hatred, resentment, or even a trace of emotion. Only a vast calm. No, I don't hate you, Gu Huaijin. I don't hate you anymore. Hate still means you care. As for me, I can't even be bothered to hate him anymore. He took a step back, covered his heart, and spat out a mouthful of blood, but he paid no mind, only looking at me. I said calmly to the eunuch beside me, escort General Gu out of the palace. He is severely injured. Do not delay his treatment. The eunuch hurried forward and carefully supported him. He no longer struggled. Nor did he speak again, allowing the eunuchs to support him as he staggered around and disappeared step by step outside the Yongle Palace. 1 month later, a wedding was held at the general's residence. It was said that the groom remained expressionless throughout, like a puppet, completing all the rituals. Although the bride, Su Wanyin, wore her wedding dress, there was little joy on her face. These are merely topics for idle chatter after meals. At the same time, an imperial edict of marriage was delivered to Yongle Palace and Jingwang Manor. There was no clamor, no commotion, everything fell into place naturally. On the day of the grand wedding, the weather was splendid. The ceremony proceeded according to tradition, solemn yet not overly elaborate. Pei Ziheng, dressed in bright red wedding attire, held my hand. I looked into his eyes. There was no wild fervor, no heavy burden, only clear joy, solemn promises, and a steady sense of reassurance. The rites were completed. The red candles in the bridal chamber burned brightly as he removed the heavy phoenix crown from my head and unfastened the intricate clasps of my wedding dress, showing not a hint of impatience. Are you tired? I shook my head. Not too bad. He smiled and retrieved a slender box from nearby. Take a look at this. I opened it to find a scroll inside. Unrolling it, I discovered it was a blueprint for a villa in the outskirts of the capital. The layout was exquisite and elegant, with pavilions, terraces, towers, a small bridge, and flowing water. What was even more remarkable were the detailed notes beside it indicating where hot spring water could be channeled, where cold-resistant flowers and plants should be grown, and which spots offered the most open views. Every detail was thoughtful and perfectly aligned with my preferences. This is our new residence. I sketched the draft. And the Ministry of Works is currently renovating it. If there's anything you'd like to add or change, just let me know. We have all the time in the world to arrange it slowly. No earth-shattering vows, only this tangible plan for the future. I looked at him. All right, we'll take it slow.